So I've been looking at a lot online lately, and I've seen just kind of crazy overbuilds, in my opinion, of camera gear and even setups on, different movie sets and productions and whatnot. And just kind of wanted to get back to talking about, keeping it simple. So KISS, as they used to say, keep it simple, stupid. And I've definitely been guilty of that myself, but I feel like a lot of it probably has to do with imposter syndrome. A lot of people that are in production, especially when they're starting out, feel like they don't have the best camera, they don't have the best equipment, so they want to impress their clients and they want to have like a built-up kit. And I totally get that. And sometimes you want to build up a small camera because you have a special need for it. But it seems like more often than not, people are just building them up to build them up and make them look more impressive than what they really are. Just over the years, I've been doing this for so long that I've kind of realized that in the end, it's really what you're bringing to the table, what you're bringing to your clients. That's really the important thing. For example, I have quite a few cameras now. I've been in this career a long time. I've got some really nice high-end cameras, and I've got some medium cameras, and I've got what is kind of currently my favorite, which is this little guy. It's the Sony FX3, and you see it's pretty basic. It does have a cage on it, I will admit, and I have a air tag on here, and I've got an airy rosette that sometimes I put a little handle on. And other than that, I might put the top handle on there if I need some special audio or whatever. And I'll put an external monitor, like a 5-inch monitor, if I feel like I need that. But again, the point of the camera is the fact that it's so small and so compact. And I feel like sometimes we're losing that because we want to add all this extra stuff to it, right? We want to add a V-mount battery to it. We want to add not just a monitor, but we want a matte box, but we don't even use the matte box for its intended purpose. It's just for show because, matte boxes are pretty cool, kind of impressive looking. And I think we're getting to the point where we're so busy trying to impress people with what we have instead of impressing people with what we do. And I think that's an important takeaway, right? So an example, this camera, and I also have an A7S III, which is kind of the same camera. I have a client that is a pretty large client, and I've done some campaigns with them. And this past year, I shot everything with the A7S III and the FX3. And we did all the interviews, we did all the B-roll, and we immediately didn't have a whole lot of time. And one of the things I was thinking of is I just needed something that was nimble, something that was quick, and something that was easy to use. And that's exactly what I got with these cameras. If I had used a larger camera, then I would have had a lot of those other issues, right? Just having a bigger camera, it's harder to travel with, it's harder to move around with. They can be a little bit more intimidating, especially when you're working with people that aren't used to being in front of a camera. So there are a lot of advantages to the small camera. And in the end, the client hired me for me and for my skills and what I was able to bring to the table. They didn't care what camera I used at all. And I think that we have this kind of sense that we're trying to impress clients and they're not always thinking about, oh, what kind of camera is that? Sure, they can be impressed with that. I'll tell you what, clients are probably more impressed with having, lights and things like that on a set. If they just go to a set that you've built, you're doing, a one-person interview, and you have your Sony FX3 or A7S III or a DSLR or some smaller camera, if you have a couple of lights set up, they're going to be impressed already. They're going to see that you're doing something and you're being professional. And it's the end results that really make the difference. And that's what I think is something that we kind of lose, right? Again, I kind of count that on imposter syndrome. We all get nervous that they're going to think less of us because of, the equipment that we're using, that we bring. And you've heard, I'm sure, a million times whether someone is, touting a red or they're touting an Arri or they're touting, whatever camera, that it's just a tool, right? And sure, it's easy to say when you have one of these cameras so that you get to use them. But it's true. It is just a tool, and it's the right tool for the job. That particular project that I did, it was something that was exactly what I needed for the project because I didn't have a whole lot of time with the people that we were interviewing, that we were working with. And I needed to be nimble. We did a lot of travel. And so I basically had a primary camera and I had a backup camera and had a couple of basic lights with me. And we used basic audio. We used these DJI mics actually. And everything worked out just great, and the client was thrilled with it. And these were projects that were shown to thousands of people. And not once did anyone come up to me and say, "Hey, did you just use a little FX3? That's, that's silly." No, that wouldn't happen, right? They don't care. So I just want people to kind of keep that in mind. Don't lose sight of what you're doing and what you're doing for your client or for a project. Make sure that that's the important thing. What is the best thing that you can use? And also, if that's all that you have at the time, if you can only afford a DSLR camera, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. You're building your skills, you're learning. So I don't think you need to get too bogged down on what the camera is. And these days, sure, the technology is there. I mean, you can match pretty much any camera to any other camera these days, which is incredible. And I'll be honest, I think if anything, it's probably the glass that's going to make a bigger difference than what the camera is that you're using. And even then, most people are not going to notice or pay attention. The project I was just talking about, I used just two zoom lenses. I used a 24 to 105 Sony, and I used a 16 to 35 Sony. That's all I used for everything that I shot. And again, it was for speed and for convenience because I wanted to use primes. I wanted to use some nice primes, but I didn't have the time for that. And you just got to throw that out the window and go with what you need for the project. And that's what I needed. So another thing that I see is a lot of people kind of over lighting things, and especially on YouTube, everyone's excited about booklight lighting and getting all these kind of setups. And first of all, I think it's great when you're out practicing and you're learning how to do different types of lighting. But there are 100 ways to skin a cat, as they say, and that's the same with lighting. You can have the same exact look with simpler methods than what you sometimes see online. And I think people need to kind of learn not to, kind of judge things by what you're shooting and how much time that you have and how much crew you have, right? Booklight lighting is very cool, but it takes more equipment to do. It takes a little bit more time and it takes a little bit more space. So you got to think about, do I have all those elements to actually get this done? And what else could I do to make it look the same? So an example is I shot a commercial last fall, and part of the commercial had already been shot, and it was shot in Sweden, and the rest of it was being shot here. And we were basically doing these really nice interviews. And from the appearance of what I got from the agency, it was basically looked like just kind of like a single light coming down on the person with a black background. And as I looked at it, I just thought, just off the top of my head, I thought, you know what, I'm just going to get a single light with one of those big soft boxes that we all like to use these days, have some diffusion in there, put a grid on it, and just kind of shoot it down on there. And that's kind of it. I think that's the look. And I got a lighting diagram from the DP in Sweden, and I was kind of taken aback. The point of it is they basically had about 5 or 6 different lights. They had all kinds of diffusion, and what they essentially were creating was a gigantic softbox that they were shining all this light through to create this same look. Now, in the agency world, I have to admit, sometimes, you're trying to overdo things for the client. This is where, we're talking about trying to impress clients. This seems to be the area that everyone wants to impress the agency because of all the money that's involved with it. But the advantage I had was that nobody from that team was coming over here stateside. So I had my team and we went and looked at it, and I kept studying it and I kept thinking, am I doing something wrong? But no, I went with my initial gut and I used a single light, put it down, and we were on Zoom with the client once we were live, and they looked at it and said, "Oh my God, it looks exactly like what we shot in Sweden. That's amazing." And I thought, yeah. And how much time did they spend, setting up that entire thing where we spent maybe, 30, 45 minutes getting the single light kind of set the way that we wanted and made sure that we were using the images that they gave us for reference. So again, the point is, you don't have to reinvent the wheel, to create something that looks good and go through all this extra effort. You're paying me for the amount of experience that I have, right? So it took me 10 years to figure out how to do it in 30 minutes. So you're not paying me for the 30 minutes, you're paying me for all the years it took me. And I think that's an important thing. And again, when you're starting out, sometimes it's harder to have that discussion with your client, whether it's the producer or whether it's a director. Um, you need to learn to try and have enough confidence in yourself to say, hey, I can accomplish this way, and it's going to save us some time and some effort, and you'll get the exact look that you're going for in a much more efficient way. And it's a difficult thing, and it does take time, especially when you're young. I know the younger that you are, the more people are kind of looking down at you like, well, what does this kid know, right? But if you have, true faith in yourself, and you have that, you're learning to have that experience, you're learning how to talk to people about those kinds of things, the better off that you're going to be. Because in the end, if you are efficient, if you're really good at what you do, they're going to hire you back for that more than anything else. When you see more videos online of people with these crazy overdone kits, right? And I'm not talking about just the cameras, I'm talking about it's a simple shot, right? Like it might be just a little push in shot, but they've got a gimbal. They've got their easy rig for the gimbal to support it. They've got this giant camera, and they're doing this push in shot. And all I'm thinking of is all the extra effort that you're putting into making a simple shot. If you have something really simple, I promise you, if you just hold the camera really steady and just kind of push in on it, you're going to get that same kind of look, that same shot. And don't forget too, I highly recommend people, especially who are just shooters, start learning to do some editing work, do some post work, because when you understand what the technology is on that side of things, you'll also understand what you can and can't get away with, right? And in that regard, I'm saying that if you have a shot that might be a little bit shaky, you can fix a lot of that in post nowadays. A lot of those things can be taken out. A lot of the cameras have built-in stabilization. Again, another reason why I like the FX3 and the A7S3. They've got great image stabilization. I do so many shots handheld now that I used to do with a gimbal or with a steady cam or something like that, that I don't have to anymore. All these pieces of equipment definitely have their place, but sometimes we're so enamored with the idea of having this amazing big kit that we're not really thinking about the efficiency of just trying to get the shot done, right? And sometimes all this stuff can get in the way of getting a really good shot done instead of just having all this equipment. Because again, the more stuff that you bring to set, the more stuff that you're using, especially if you have a small crew, the more things can go wrong and the more issues that you could have. So are you prepared to take care of the issue? If you have the gimbal and it starts to mess up on you, you have a battery issue, maybe you need to recalibrate it every 5 seconds for some strange reason. Suddenly the director wants you to change the lenses on it. Now you got to rebalance it, but now it doesn't want to balance, or whatever it is. If you've got the time, you've got the money, you've got the crew, you got the resources, then go for it. I mean, have fun. That's part of what we do this for, right? We love all this tech. We love all the geeky stuff. But again, otherwise, when you're, a solo shooter, you're small, you're starting out, keep it simple. Worry about the story, worry about what imagery you're putting on the screen for your audience. So that's it for this one. If you have any questions or comments, or you want me to talk about something, just let me know and I'll be happy to do it.